This is review. Verify that the segment lengths, or width lengths 3, 4, and 6 form a triangle. Is a triangle acute, right, or obtuse? First off, with a raised hand, can anybody tell me how we verified lengths formed a triangle? Andrew?
Add them.
Add what?
The links.
All of them?
Wait, what? Oh, you're on that one.
We're just
no,
verifying.
You add the first two, or the smallest?
The smallest, yeah, 3 and 4, which makes 7. And then what do we do with that?
You see if it's greater than the biggest one.
Yeah, see if it's greater than the biggest one. Is 7 bigger than 6?
Yes.
It sure is. So this is a triangle. After this, we're going to decide if it's acute, right, or obtuse. We do that using the Pythagorean theorem. So remember that if you do it this direction, a squared plus b squared and c squared, if the legs are bigger than the hypotenuse, that would make it acute. And if the legs are smaller than the hypotenuse, that would make it obtuse. That is why I told you to make it simpler. What should you do first? Not a squared plus b squared. What was the other option? C squared. And then a squared plus b squared. You're comparing the length of the hypotenuse squared to the legs squared and added together. So which one of these lengths would be the hypotenuse squared? 6 squared. All right, and then what will my other two legs be?
3 squared and 4 squared.
And 4 squared. What is 6 squared?
6 squared is 36.
36. And what is 3 squared? 9. And 4 squared is 16. So then we need to compare 36 to, what is 9 plus 16? 25. 36 is larger. So 36 represented the hypotenuse squared. So when the hypotenuse squared is larger than the leg squared, what kind of triangle would this be?
Obtuse.
Obtuse. That is why you do the hypotenuse first. Okay? If you don't, you got to think it through. Questions on this? Okay, go ahead and flip to the last page, not the blank on the very back, but one page before that. Your quiz over this is next Wednesday. Your review sections for this are due next Tuesday. So on this review section, it says divide out the GCF. Go ahead and write this at the bottom because it's not there. 12x cubed plus 4x squared y plus 8x. Just write at the bottom somewhere. When it says divide out the GCF, what does GCF stand for?
Greatest common factor.
Greatest common factor. So how many terms are there in this expression? 3 of them. Terms are separated by plus signs. So there are 3 of them. So we need to decide what number they're all 3 divisible by. What number do we think?
4. Definitely 2.
They are divisible by 2. We're looking for the greatest number.
Greatest common.
So 4.
4.
Ignoring it. 4. What letters, that's the number, what letter do they all 3 have in common? X. They all have at least one of the X's. So here is where you need to make sure you answer correctly. Is this an equation?
No.
No, there's no equal sign. This is still an expression, so when you divide out, you need to write it on the outside. Because expressions can't change their value. They need to stay the same value but look different. So what is 12 divided by 4? 3. And then what is x cubed divided by x?
X squared.
X squared. 4 divided by 4 cancels out. Yeah, x squared divided by x. X. And then what do we do with the y? Yeah, you bring it down. Slide it down. I like it. And then last, 8x divided by 4x, which is 2. So this would be your final answer. You can't divide anything else out, so this is it. When you divide out, you have to make sure you write it on the outside, because if you were to redistribute this, it is equivalent to what you started with. Okay? So that's what you do in that section. Go ahead and go to the front, where we talk about sine, cosine, and tangent. All right, so I don't care what your notes look like. I'm going to show you what I do, but whatever you want to do is fine. You've seen SOH, TOA before. SOH stands for sine. Does anybody remember what the O stands for? Opposite. And H stands for? Hypotenuse. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine stands for adjacent over hypotenuse. A lot of people make the mistake on this one because when you say ca, and I don't, but some people do, when you say what up ca or whatever, how do you spell that? It would be C-U-H. But here, you're going to have to tell yourself it is an A. Is a U even used around here? No. Okay? So make sure, if you're that person that says that word, you need to make sure you remember it's an A and not a U. Or an O. It's an A. So ka. So ka. So ka. I don't know. I was thinking of a ka, like a ka. No. Like a bird. I was thinking of Kevin from
That's me.
from Up. Like the bird. Anyways, and then last, tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. So when I think of TOA, I think of like a boa. What other things in life are boas? What are boas? Boa constrictors. What else?
Bow ties.
Thank you. Feathery scarves. My other classes don't always know that. Y'all know what a boa is, right? Put it around your neck. It's like a scarf. It's super itchy. They're at craft stores. They wear them in white chicks.
Never seen one.
What?
You've never seen White Chick?
I don't recommend.
That's an amazing.
10 out of 10. Dang it, I'm recording. It is what it is. It's not. It's racist. They're black men dressing as white women. It's super funny if you like Terry Crews. It's hilarious.
Turd Cruise?
Terry?
Oh, I swear I heard you say Turd Cruise.
It is what it is. Anyways, here we go. So, you're looking at this. Why hasn't it moved over? It's okay. It's at the top of your page to triangle. It's not cut off on my iPad, but it's cut off here. So I'll just draw it for you. This is a 6. Here's what's not on your page that needs to be. We need to decide what to name each of these angles. So give me 3 letters.
All right, KJV. King James Version.
Perfect.
Well,
You can't see it.
See them.
It's okay. On my iPad you can. Remember, not everything in life's about you, Kevin.
That's why 2 of those letters are my initials.
Congratulations. Here we go. We are going to find... We're going to find the trig ratios from the smallest acute angle. So here is what we need to do first. Which one is the smallest acute angle?
6.
6 is not an angle. It's a side.
K is definitely. V.
Okay, pause. V is the smallest acute angle. So how did you figure out that V was the smallest? It's opposite the smallest side. Thank you, Chris. Opposite of the smallest side, which makes it the smallest angle. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to say sine. Can you see that? I'll make it white. It's fine. Sine, and you cannot just say sine. You have to tell me what angle you're coming from. Here's why. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. If I'm coming in from this door, what is opposite of me?
That one.
That one. If I'm coming in from this door, what's opposite of me?
That.
Wall, yeah. So you have to tell me what perspective you're coming from. What angle are you finding sine from? So what angle are we finding sine from right here? V. You have to tell me what angle. If you don't write an angle here at all, I will not even look at it. I will just mark it wrong. Do we understand each other?
Yes, ma'am.
I won't say, oh, well, I think he meant, no. Because what this is setting us up for is to be able to solve for this angle. Because of these ratios, we'll be able to find out what J and V, what their angles are. Okay? Yes, sir, what's your question?
Do we write this?
You need to, yeah. This is the whole lesson. So sine of V is opposite over hypotenuse. So we need to label our sides. Okay? So the easiest ones to label are opposite and hypotenuse. What is the hypotenuse of this triangle? 10. Just by looking at it, which one is the opposite of the angle we're talking about? 6. 6 is opposite. So then what was the last option? We had opposite, we had hypotenuse. Nope. What is it? 8 would be my adjacent. So you need to label hypotenuse, then the opposite, and then eventually label the adjacent. Okay, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So what was the opposite side? 6, and then my hypotenuse is 10. Do we reduce in math?
Yes.
We do. What does 6 over 10 reduce to? 3 over 5. Then we move on to cosine of V. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So what is adjacent to V?
The hypotenuse.
8.
What is the adjacent side? 8. And then over the hypotenuse, which is 10. What does 8 over 10 reduce to? 4 over 5. Last, we have tangent of V. Tangent, TOA, is opposite over adjacent. So what's my opposite? 6. And my adjacent is 8. What does this reduce to? 3 over 4. So remember when I told you, what was the most common Pythagorean triple? 3, 4, 5. Look at where all these reduce to. 3, 5, 4. Because, think about this. What number are all 3 of these numbers divisible by? 2. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. What's 8 divided by 2? 4. What's 10 divided by 2? 3, 4, 5. That's going to happen a lot today. You're going to see it. What did you say? Anyways, here we go. Find the trig functions from the largest acute angles. This is the next section. It's the same. What did we say? This is V. So we're doing the same thing, but from a different angle. We said K.
Is this what the smallest triangle is for?
J.
The next triangle is for?
Yep. The next triangle is for this. It's the same thing. Here's what you're going to need to be able to do for your quiz. Your quiz, you're going to be asked to find the sine, cosine, and tangent. But on your quiz, one of these sides will not have a side found. So how would you find a missing side in a right triangle if you didn't know it?
You add them all up.
They have nothing to do with angles. So raise our hands. Chris. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. The Pythagorean theorem is how you find a missing side in a right triangle. You will be asked to do that on your quiz. So make sure you know if you're missing a side, you do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right, so let's find sine from the largest acute angle. Which one is the largest acute angle?
K.
Is K acute?
No.
It's 90. 90 is a right angle. Think about this. Don't just freeze for a second. If you were finding sine from K, sine is what side over what side? It's opposite over hypotenuse. What is opposite of K? The hypotenuse. Does that sound like something we can do?
No.
It's not. You will never find sine, cosine, or tangent from this right angle because there's nothing to solve for. It's a right angle. It's 90. Nothing to know about it. So, what is the largest acute angle?
J.
It's J. So, from the perspective of J, I want you to label your sides opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. They will change. All right, so what is the hypotenuse of this right triangle? 10. Did that change? No. But what did change?
The opposite.
Opposite. What's opposite now?
8.
8, which makes 6 my adjacent. All right, so let's find sine from what angle? From J. Sine from J is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is 8 over 10. Reduce it. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, which here is 6 over 10, which reduces to. And then tangent, so TOA, should be opposite over adjacent, which is 8 over 6. What does 8 over 6 reduce to? 4 over 3. Does Mrs. Marshall like mixed numbers?
No.
No. Leave it.
I'll leave it.
That's a.
You said.
I said I don't like mixed numbers. I like improper fractions. And you will too. Because if you have these, you are 2 buttons away from finding out what angle J is and angle V is. That's why we're going to use your calculators this week. All right, let's look. Find the cosine. So we're just doing it. We'll do it one more time. If you wow me, we won't do another example like it. Find the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios from angle C. What's my hypotenuse of this triangle? 50. What's my opposite?
14.
14. All right, and then that would make 48 my adjacent. So sine from what angle? C. So remember, so TOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 14 over 50. Does this reduce?
Yes. 7 over 25.
They're both even, so 7 over 25. Cosine of C.
48 over 50.
Yep, my adjacent over my hypotenuse should be 48 over 50. I'm getting there. It's okay. Which reduces to 24 over 25. Then last is tangent of C, TOA, which would be opposite over adjacent. My opposite is 14. My adjacent is. They're both even, so they definitely reduce to 7 over 24. Questions? You what? A few of you did. Some of you are still writing it down.
Jazz hands.
Should have done jazz hands. Yeah. We're going to move on to these. They're at the bottom of the page. You can see it on your paper. I know it's cut off on my screen, but this is sine. I think this is angle A. All right, so find the following trig ratio. So in number 1, we're finding sine from angle A. For sine, what fraction are we looking for?
Opposite over hypotenuse.
Opposite over hypotenuse. So we need to find the opposite. What is opposite of angle A? 24. And then what's the hypotenuse? 30. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the longest side. Always, always. All right, so sine of angle A, my fraction will look like 24 over 30. Does this reduce?
Yes.
What are they both divisible by? 6. So it is 4 over 5. The reason I ask what it is divisible by, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Number 2 says find sine from C. So what is opposite of angle C? 32. So opposite. So we're not using the fancy calculators yet. You should be reducing without them. You're not going to be able to use them on your quiz, just so we're all clear. Not this upcoming quiz. What is my hypotenuse? 40. All right, so opposite 32 over 40. What does this reduce to? 4 over 5. It's all good. So at this point, you're like, that's a popular number. Just think about this. What did we divide 24 and 30 by? 6. What's 18 divided by 6? 3. What's 24 divided by 6? 4. What's 30 divided by 6?
5.
What's the most common Pythagorean triple?
5.
What did we divide these by? 8. What's 32 divided by 8? 4. 24 divided by 8. 3. 40 divided by 8. I told you, it's most common. 3, 4, 5. You're going to be using it not a billion times, a good amount. All right, let's look at letter C. Go ahead and start labeling your sides. opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse? What is opposite of angle C?
15.
15. What's the hypotenuse?
25.
So then what's my adjacent? 20. Remember that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So what's my adjacent? 20 over my hypotenuse, which is 25. What does this reduce to? Popular today. I promise it's the last time, I think. Cosine of angle A, what's my hypotenuse? 41. What's my opposite? 40. And my adjacent? 9. I would check your last one. So cosine of angle A is going to be my adjacent, which we said was 9, over my hypotenuse, which is, that's it. Sorry. These are the last two, and then we get to play our Kahoot, which will have more than enough time to be able to exempt out of some homework, as long as we're all working hard together. So finding tangent of C. Let's label our sides. What's my hypotenuse? 34. What's my opposite? 30. And what's my adjacent? 16. So if you struggle with finding your opposite, turn your paper to where the corner is pointed at you, and then look at which side ends up being your opposite. All right, so tangent is opposite over adjacent, so what's my opposite? 30 over my adjacent, which is, does this reduce? It does, to 15 over 8, yeah? Thank you. Last, we have tangent of x. What's my hypotenuse? 17. My opposite? And my adjacent?
15.
So then what's my final fraction going to be? 8 over 15. So this is what your homework is going to look like. The first page, so you need to especially pay attention to this so you don't do this wrong. The first page says find the trig ratio and reduce fraction to lowest terms. So what do you think it wants its answer to look like? No, it'll tell you. It looks like a fraction. Reduced to its lowest terms. That's it. Yeah. On the back, it says find the value of each trig ratio rounded to the nearest 10,000th. So does that sound like a fraction? No. What does that sound like? A decimal. So here's what you need to do. Without your fancy calculator, you should be able to do this. How do I make 15 over 8 into a decimal rounded to the nearest 10,000th?
You just put...
This is why I don't like the calculator, because you don't even know how to divide a fraction. What do? 15 divided by 8. That's it.
Who didn't know that?
Nobody said anything. So your answer would look like 1.875. Technically, rounded to the nearest 10,000th, how many zeros are there?
There's 3. Wait.
10,000?
Oh, 4. In 10,000?
In 10,000. All right, it's up here.
4 zeros.
There's 4 zeros, so technically that's 4 decimal places. Y'all know how that works, right? Hundreds places, 2 decimal places, because there's 2 zeros in 100, so on and so forth. So your homework answer would be 1.875. The reason it says round, if you ended up getting like 1/3, what is 1/3 equivalent to? Yeah, 0.333. So how many places would I stop at?
2, 3, 3.
I would stop at the 4th decimal place, because it says round to the nearest 10,000th. Okay, so that's how you do your homework. And the front says leave it in a fraction. The back says make it a decimal. Okay? We're going to go ahead and play Kahoot.